Are you tired of struggling with your options trading? The highest paid online is having a March Madness sale on the VIP course. Use code MARCH40 to receive 40% off the VIP course. This sale ends on March 31st, 2025. Go to highestpaid.online and get started today.
So what's going on? It's David W. Williams, also known as the Retail Trader. Appreciate you coming through. So really quickly, want to talk about this, and a lot of this is going to be based on my opinion. It's not going to be a lot of data dropping, just going to give you my perspective on how I see a particular thing, but most importantly, start asking you questions about yourself and what you're engaged in and what you're involved in and what you're looking to get out of it. So again, what we don't do on this channel is we don't spend a lot of time letting you talk about other people as the reason why your life looks the way it looks. We're going to spend more time looking at you and what you're involved in to get you to kind of understand that may be the main reason why your life looks the way it looks. So that's kind of what makes my channel a little bit different than a lot of other people, right? So let me tell you a really quick story about kind of a lot of what inspired me to do what I'm currently doing, right? We're talking about lack of progress is death, and then problem solving versus escapism. Before I jumped on this internet, got really big on this social. I used to work with a lot of B.O.B. businesses. I was doing a lot of media buying, but also working as like a marketing consultant. And I worked with a lot of businesses, like person to person, trying to really help them understand how to get their marketing together. And it was very fulfilling work. I liked what I was doing. And then when I got on the internet, what I witnessed was a lot of people, but especially in the Black sector of YouTube, where they would get on the internet and just complain about everything in life. And it was very disconcerting to me because a lot of it was being done by men. And during the time in which they should be productive, during the working hours of the day, they were on the internet complaining about everything and talking about how they were going to drop out of life and they weren't going to participate in what was going on around them, and they weren't going to offer any assistance. And I didn't understand how this was a solution to a problem. And what I had to realize is that many of them had been socialized and had been miseducated to where that they thought that was going to be a way to resolve a lot of their issues. They were very apathetic. They were very turned off. So I know now why we had this big movement of everybody saying, well, the solution to my problem now was to go overseas, because they had pretty much already dropped out of their actual environment that they were living in. And they didn't want to do anything to change their actual environment. So now was to drop out and then go do something else. And that's something I want to really get you to realize, is that, are you apathetic about what's going on in your life? Have you just decided that, you know what, the situation is just so much bigger than me? I don't necessarily have the skills or the tools to do anything about it. And so then it is what it is. And I'm just going to just live my life and try to ignore it. And I've always felt for a very long time is that that's the deal they try to sell to a lot of Black people, is that you have very little to no agency over what's going on around you. And so what you have to do is just figure out how to deal with it, because you can't do anything about it anyway. And I'm not talking about on a national level. I'm talking about in your own local area. And we're going to kind of get into that. But that's something that very much inspired me to do what I was doing, because I've never been in an environment with a bunch of people and all they do is sit around and complain about what's going on and talking about how, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I don't want to do anything to change it. To me, it was very much a loser's mentality. And I didn't want to have anything to do with that. So this is one of the reasons why I knew I was never going to fit in with a lot of these people on the internet, because I never had that kind of mentality, right? I believe that there's things that can be done to change things if we're willing to put the work in, right? We have to identify the problem, figure out what we need to do to try to solve the problem, and then start putting the work in. And that's often what a lot of people don't want to do, is actually go put that work in. And we're going to kind of talk about that. They want to do everything else except that. Right. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So this is kind of what inspired me. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons that inspired me to do what I'm currently doing on the internet now, is I just didn't think that was a good look for a lot of people. And I realized, and something that About the Hood got me to understand, is that many times we're not being offered options that are beneficial to us. For a lot of people in the situation that we're in, regardless of their ethnicity or their race, is that they're being offered to live vicariously through somebody else, or to just complain about everything and to just be mad all the time, or to just take drugs and just drop out. And that's like their three options. They're not really being offered an option to actually do anything about what's actually going on. So this is why you got so many people that believe we're dissatisfied with all these things on in the world, but we're going to just elect this one person in DC, and that one person in DC is going to change everything. They don't have the ability to do that anyway, because one person in DC can't really change what's going on in your city or your town. You got to start doing that type of work. But people don't feel empowered to do that type of work. So then they just kind of fall into this attitude to where if we can just get this one person, because essentially what you're doing is you're living through that one person, we can get them in position, then everything else is going to work out. We feel better about our life. They ran that play on black people for decades. What we're seeing now is they're starting to run that play on white folks, right? And it's working the same way it worked on black folks. For a very long time, when I was growing up, black people tried to live through other black folks. So the system will promote certain black people. And then black people will look at their success and feel like that's my success too, even though it's not as their success. We're seeing that now with Anglos, to where the system will promote certain Anglos, and then Anglos will try to live through that Anglo and say, well, because that person's successful, I'm successful too. No, you're not. You're where you're at. That person's success is not your success. Right? So we're in this weird space now to where you have, Anglos that make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year identifying with billionaires. Your lifestyle is nothing like that person. And you really don't have the same political goals of that person. You don't, because you don't have the same type of life that this person has. So I don't think that's a good look for a lot of people. And so something that Bought a Hood really got me to understand is that you could do something different if you offer people different options. But one of the challenges that we run into is socialization. We have to ask ourselves a question: are people born a certain way? Are they developed a certain way, or is it a combination of the two? Am I like I am because I was born a certain way, or was I socialized a certain way, or was it a combination of the two things? And how can solutions reach people where they're currently at? And then how can we get people where they're currently at and then give them an incentive to move into a different direction? Right? So we're going to kind of talk about that. What about things being different? Let's say maybe it's now 40 years ago than where we're currently at now. Was the world different to where people had more agency and they had more inspiration to do things different? Or were people just different people back then? And we're going to talk about that. So the first thing we're going to talk about that I want to kind of go into is this lack of progress, right? If you're in an organization or a group and it's not about progressing, right, you're going to die. And I don't mean die physically. What I mean is that you're going to essentially die a death of stagnation, right? So a lot of people may know about Big U getting indicted in this big case, and then people pretty much throwing everything at him, throwing pretty much the whole book at the guy. A lot of the stuff to me don't even make no sense, but that's kind of what they do. They did the same thing with Jeffrey Williams out here in the Metro, and eventually what he ended up doing was pleading to something else, right? But that's kind of what they do. What I want you to understand, though, is that if you're in these organizations, right, and not just if you're in these organizations, but just in life general, and there's no goal to progress in life, you're going to die the death of stagnation, right? So many people are going to look at these situations and they're going to think, well, you know what? I'm nothing like these people. If you're in a situation, whether you're in a partnership, relationship, you're in an organization, and there is no progression. So we have goals that we're trying to hit. So something that Amos Wilson taught me that was really, really important is that your group needs to have a goal, right? And if your group doesn't have a goal, that's a goal. So your group needs to have stated goals. This is what a lot of people struggle with. Your group needs to have stated goals, and then we need a process of how can we get to these stated goals. Don't mean we're going to be successful. Doesn't mean it's going to work out the way we want it to work. But it means that we do have some stated goals, right? Where a lot of people struggle is that they don't want to do the stated goals, or if they do the stated goals and it don't work, then they get soured on that type of model or format. But if you're in a group, you're in a relationship, you're in whatever, and there's no goals that we're trying to hit, that lack of progress is going to be the death of that situation. And so what we see with a lot of people is that they are in situations and there is no goal to progress. right? It's just, we'll just do things to have fun and enjoy yourself, yada, yada, yada. But there is no progress. And then what happens is you look up and you're a certain age and you haven't really gone anywhere over the past 10, 15 years. You've been kind of on a hamster wheel. Then you jump on the internet, it's everybody else's fault, right? But when you was a certain age and somebody like me was telling you, you need to get some group goals and you need to figure out how you can implement those goals and get them, that wasn't entertaining, that wasn't fun. And then I didn't want to do the work to do that because it's the work, right? And many people struggle on the work side of solving the problem, right? They would everything else until it's time to do the day in, day out implementation of the situation. I don't want to have nothing to do with that, right? So if you're in a situation and you're not progressing, you're going to die the death of stagnation. You're going to die because you're going to stay stuck. And so you got to look at a lot of people. You're not seeing a progression in what they're doing. They're staying stuck or they're organizing you to stay stuck, right? So you can be very successful in this world if you organize people to stay stuck, right? I used to teach this when I taught my dark persuasion. There's a lot of money in this world if you can organize the masses to support the system. And part of supporting the system is keeping people stuck, right? There is no progression goal. It's you just stay right here. Then if I can organize you to stay right here, the system will compensate me a lot of money because why? They know they can go to me for that role, right? And then because you're apathetic, you're disillusioned, you're discouraged, yada, 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 you now don't want to be persuaded and prodded to do nothing different. You just want to be entertained right where you're at. So you look for that type of stuff in the world. So maybe the reason why 40, 50 years ago, people did things differently is because they didn't have access to all this entertainment in front of them at the tip of their fingers. They had to go do something because there was nothing else to do, right? Because there was a time to where the entertainment was you're going to listen to the radio. That was it. It wasn't really a lot else to do. So people did things in the real world because it wasn't a lot else to do, right? And so that's what I want you to understand. I sat back and looked at a lot of these West Coast organizations, and what I see is a lack of progression, right? Look at a lot of these Chicago organizations. What I see is a lack of progress. Nobody moving forward with nothing, right? And so what you have is just hamster wheeling, but they're not different than anybody else in society because most people in society, they're not progressing in life. They're staying right where they're at. Well, how come they're staying right where they're at? Because they don't know how to solve problems. If you don't know how to solve problems, you'll stay stuck. So when you don't have a problem solving mechanism inside your group, whether your group is 2 people, whether you are a 1-person situation, right? Or you're 1 person and you got some people contracted out with you. If you don't have a problem solving mechanism inside your group, you're going to stay stuck. You can think that's my opinion. I'm telling you, you live long enough, you're going to figure that out. Now, many of you are going to accept just being stuck because in this game in America, you can be stuck and have a house, have a car, have a little bit of money, get drugs, get alcohol, get sex, because why? Everybody's stuck. There's a small amount of people that are actually solving problems. So you're waiting on those people to solve your problems for you to get a problem solved. The problem is that if they don't have an incentive to solve your problem and they decide not to, then you just stay stuck. And we're going to talk about that a little later. Right? So when I look at a lot of these situations, what I see is people that are just stuck. The downside is that they never have been given the tools to solve their problem because that's not how their system was supposed to work. Erica did a really good video yesterday with this guy that I knew of but hadn't seen in a long time. And he talked about how they give different educations to different groups of people. And often people that think they have a certain level of education, they don't because they can't solve problems. And I've said that for years. And Amos Wilson also got me to understand, right, is that we're educated to solve Anglo problems. We're not educated to solve our problems. So we'll go to school and get XYZ degree and still can't solve our problems, right? But he wasn't the first person to say that. Carter G. Woodson said that in the early 1900s. And he's one of the first people to get a PhD. He's one of the first Black people in the United States to get a PhD from Harvard. And he came back and said that a lot of Negroes that get these educations can't help Black people solve their problems. They have no value to Black people because they were educated to solve Anglo problems, right? So what I'm trying to get people to understand is that you not understanding how to solve problems means that you just stay stuck, right? But you're the solution to somebody else's problem. So then what they do is they come at you with these things. So worrying about JFK getting assassinated, that's entertainment. How is that a solution to your problem? Now, if your problem is that you're bored, that's a solution. But there's nothing that you're going to do around JFK that's going to change anything. He's been dead a very, very long time. His wife has been dead a very, very long time. His children passed a long time ago. The estate may still be there, right? The person that they claim shot him has been dead. They killed him within a certain amount of days after JFK got shot, right? The guy that shot JFK, that they claim shot JFK, he been dead a long time. So how does solving or coming to a revelation around that, how does that change anything? So we know, okay, it's entertainment. So is the real problem that you're bored? So I'm asking you in the audience, is your real problem that you feel bored? Is that your real problem? That day in and day out, you feel bored about life. And I have a hard time relating to that because I used to live a life like the brother on the left. I used to be out here moving 100 miles an hour. So I was never bored. I had to slow my life down to fit in with a lot of y'all. I was never bored, right? I was not bored at all. I had stuff I was involved in every day. So I had to slow down my life to talk to people like you, right? And I had a whole job and still was moving around. That just was my personality. So I was never bored. So the question I want to ask is your real problem that you feel bored, that you don't feel fulfilled in what you're doing? So you feel bored because you got a very monotonous job. I've had them to where you go to work every day. It's not really mentally stimulating. You just got to do some tasks. So now you're looking to get stimulated. You're chasing stimulation, which really means that you're chasing dopamine. That's not I'm not saying that from a derogatory standpoint. I'm just saying that that's what you're doing. You're chasing some level of stimulation, right? So the JFK thing now is a way to get excited about something, because now I'm going to get the JFK documents and I'm going to find out who really killed JFK. Okay, if you do find out, now what happens? Right? So how does that change, or how does that solve your problem? But if your problem is that you're bored, then I get it. So I'm asking you the question. Do you feel bored? Right? Because one of the biggest challenges we have is that when we sit down and really start to have robust conversations about how do we actually solve the problem, everybody clams up. But you're going to have a guy who did what kind of law did he used to do? Family law. He does family law. He's going to talk about this case of Big U, even though he never did criminal law in his life. And he going to have the chat going crazy, right? But when we sit down and we say, okay, let's address this situation. Let's keep it on the respect level. Let's not, be confrontational, but let's keep it on the respect level. And let's try to figure, okay, what's the actual problem and how do we solve this problem? And everybody clams up, which means what? We can never solve the problem. So again, I'm going to ask you again, do you feel bored? That's a yes or no question. Is your life boring? That's a yes or no question. Because if you feel like your life is boring, right, then you will be susceptible to getting caught up in a lot of different things, because now you're looking for excitement, right? But then the question is, why do you feel like your life is boring if you feel like your life is boring? I don't feel like my life is boring. I never have felt that way. I always was able to find something to get involved in the real world. It was a long time before I got on the computer. Right. It was a chick that got me on Facebook. I didn't even want to get on Facebook. She told me to get on Facebook to talk to her. That's how I got on social media. Right. So what I want you to understand is that when we sit down and try to figure out how we can solve a lot of problems, everybody clams up. That's the first stage. The second stage is people come up with answers, but then we now go to the implementation stage. Everybody disappears. That's the second stage. So then nothing gets solved. So let me show you something real quick, right? Because this is what I want you to understand about kind of like what's going on. Because this is the person that's facilitating a lot of this nonsense. Okay, so this guy right here, right, is been sent to facilitate a lot of this nonsense. Now, a lot of these dudes in the music industry, yada, 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 and he's been appointed to do what he's doing. Because I remember when he came up, and then all of a sudden he started getting a lot of traction real fast. And when you see that, it's because the powers that be have decided he's going to be our guy. Here's something that you got to realize about the celebrity world. And people going to say, this is my opinion. You're 100% correct. But like I said, I used to teach this to people. And they was able to go out in the real world and understand how to manage situations because they understood it. Celebrities' job is not to really show you their talent. in this system. That's not really their job. Their job is to carry water for a narrative that people are trying to push. That's their job. We're not in an era anymore where people get promoted because of their talent. Do some people have talent? Yes, but they're not being promoted because they just have talent. They're being promoted because their job is to carry water for a narrative. If you can't carry water for a narrative, you won't be successful as a celebrity. And then when you can no longer carry that water, right, then they'll find somebody else. So the question, when you look at Blac Chyna with her rebrand, is she tried to carry the water of the narrative of I'm the Black woman that has changed my life. I took a turn for the better, but the system really don't want her for that. So you see that she don't have the same type of traction that she used to have when she was a stripper, yada, 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 escort, allegedly, yada, yada, yada. We do know her to be a dancer. She used to dance in KOD down in Miami, right? Before all the rappers started talking about her. So this dude has been given an assignment. People that are partnering with him are partnering with a guy who is a pornographer, right? That's not alleged, that's factual. He is a swinger. That's not alleged, that's factual. He arranges for his wife to have sex with other men as part of commercial pornography. That's not alleged, that's a fact, right? Allegedly, he's a Satan worshiper, right? And this is who these people are partnering with, because why? There's no progression in their organization. So you're joining an organization that does show you that we can take you from this role and move you to this place. There is no progression, right? So what are you joining it for? But this is all you have. So then how can I leverage this in social media to try to figure out how to, so you partner with a guy who has all these other things going on that you know about. It's not like he hiding. There's no conspiracy. It's all out in the open. And his assignment is to carry a narrative about Black folks to the rest of the world. That's his assignment, right? That's what he's been appointed to do. If you really study this dude, this family got real deep ties to the Democratic Party. If you really do the research on this dude, right? So this is his assignment. So then he goes and finds a bunch of Black people in media and puts them on the platform because he's trying to push a certain narrative, right? That's part of his assignment. So his assignment is to push a narrative about Black folks. That's what he does. And Black people are partnering with this dude because why? He got a bigger platform than them, right? Now, if you notice, they wouldn't get on Kev Mack shows like that. Kev Mack got a platform, but they wouldn't get on his show like that, right? But they would get on this dude's show like that. You see what I'm saying? Or they'll jump on Vlad's show. So Vlad made millions and millions of dollars off promoting a certain narrative, right? And got real big. He a millionaire, got hella money doing his thing. But you notice he don't put his people up there like that, right? He just put us up there like that. He don't get his folks and put them up there like that. He just put us up there like that, right? So we always a topic of conversation. He don't talk about his folks at all. But then we entertain it because we're bored. So that's why I kept asking you, do you feel bored? So my bad. I'm assuming that you're bored. You may not be bored. But that's why I kept asking you, are you bored? Why would you entertain this stuff? Then if you notice on this guy's platform, he puts people up there, right? We talk about lack of progress. Had Gina up there, right? Gina didn't learn nothing from being around this dude. So Gina's still trying to figure it out. Had all them other dudes up there. What did they learn at his platform? His platform is not, I'm going to teach you how to do media. It's just you do media up here. Half of them wasn't even getting paid. Gina wasn't getting paid, right? And so then when you leave, you don't leave with an understanding of how to do it on your own. You just got a platform to where you can now go and finally get some attention, right? Yada, 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 whatever. So it's not like it's a school of how to do it on your own. And that's something I talked about before, right? But their job is to push a certain narrative. So where's the progression in that? So if you leave him, what do you have left to show? Nothing. So then they now is in their house, live streaming, getting way less views than what they was getting on his platform because he's not going to teach them how to build their own platform. So that's why the little African dude, right? He got a no jumper situation, but when he go live stream on his own situation, he don't get nowhere near them type of views because he ain't being taught how to do what no jumper did, right? It's not a school to teach you how to do that. So one thing I can say about me is anybody that came through me, they learned, I taught them how to take where they was at and move to another place. It ain't just, I just get paid off the situation. And that was been my critique, because let me explain something to you. And I talked about, I used to work with a lot of BOBs. What inspired me to kind of do what I'm doing, but really sent me on this journey to really get into the markets, because I really went into the markets like this, is a lot of Black people was being told on social media, you need to start a business. Okay. And they would start a business and not know how to operate a business. So like Erica can teach you how to operate and grow what you got. That's why I respect her, because I could be making $250,000 a year business and Erica got game for me to go to $500,000 a year. Right. But a lot of people, they offer is start a business. And then once you starting a business is just as easy as going to get an LLC. Right. Go get it, create a service, go get a product, yada, yada, yada. That's starting a business. Now that you got to operate the business, now what do you go do? When you go back to them same people and saying, hey, I'm having operational issues, yada, 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 they don't have anything for you because their offer is just for the bottom of the funnel, which is start a business. That's where the scale is at. The scale is really not at operating the business. And then as you go on longer and longer and longer, the scale becomes less and less operating the business. Because most small businesses deal with, any accountant will tell you, the biggest challenge for a lot of small businesses is lack of cash flow. They do not have enough money running through their business. They don't. That's why all this credit stuff is crazy. You can go get credit, but it don't change the fact that you don't have money running through your business. Right? You need money to run through the business to make sure the business stays viable. You don't need millions of dollars, but you need something. Right? So the biggest issue that most small businesses have is cash flow issue. They don't have enough money running through their business because why? They're not doing enough business. They're not turning enough business in what they're doing. How do we solve that problem? You go back to those same people that never have a conversation for you because they're just there to start. That was my critique of the Black PhD. He telling all these Black people that the solution for Black folks is business, but nothing to teach you operational stuff, right? Nothing to teach you how do you take it from the startup stage to making $40,000, $50,000 a year, even though you got a full-time job. It's easy to get a start. I can show you how to start. I can show you how to launch products, the whole 9 yards. I can show you how to launch a service business. Now we got to get in the weeds and operate this business day in and day out. And how do we solve the problems that come up in business? That's the day in and day out stuff we got to do. And you got to be willing to go through the journey. This is why, to me, you're still a startup until you hit the 10-year mark, right? You got to get past 10 years of being in business. To me, you're still a startup. A lot of people can go on a run, have a hot product. You launch it at the right time. You have a hot 4 or 5 years, and then you start to see revenue start to contract because why? Your run is over, right? Your run is over. It's rare to have something like a Coca-Cola. It's rare. Find a local business in your city that's been around 20, 30 years. That's rare, okay? So what motivated me to do what I was doing was people were being told to start, but not being taught how to build it past the start level. So they would come to me to do media buys, right? And I would be like, okay, this is going to be the budget. This how much I charge to operate it. This how much it's going to cost to run the ads. And you know what? Very few of them ever had the money. Because why? They didn't have the money in their business, nor did they have the capital startup-wise to run ads. But they was told to start a business. Now they go get a credit line. But then the question is, what are we running? Do you have the money to run ads until we figure this offer out? Can you withstand that? I had a woman that I was working with. We did a hair product. We was doing frontals, and I don't know what the other part of hair is because I'm not in the weaves like that, right? But it's a lot of money in that lane. A lot of money in that lane. Ask them Asians. A lot of bread in that lane, right? And we were doing media buys and supported on Facebook, but we couldn't get traction because it was such a high ticket offer. It just took a lot of exposure to the offer to try to drive sales. She had money because she had a high paid profession. She made a lot of money, like a lot. But she just didn't want to spend the money on media buys over an extended period of time to try to get the traction with the audience. So she decided to go into another direction. But she did have the upfront money. The money was not in her business. It was a startup business. She just launched it out. But I ran into a lot of people to where you would sit down and say, okay, here's the budget for media buying. And I was doing it at a discount because I wanted to work with BOBs. BOBs mean Black-owned businesses, right? But very few people had the money. But somebody on the internet told them the solution to your problem is we need to start businesses. Do we need more businesses? Yes, but we have to understand how to operate businesses. I've told people for years, if you want to learn how to do business, get into leadership on your job. Because business is nothing but a series of managing projects, which means what? It's nothing but a series of solving problems. If you on your job right now and you don't solve problems for your job, why do you think you're going to be able to solve problems in a business? I'm going to repeat myself. If you on your 9-to-5 job right now, you do not solve problems for your job, you just sit by the water cooler and complain about everything. You just sit at the job and you gossip, right? You in the spirit of gossip on your job. Why do you think you're going to be able to start your own business and now solve problems in your business? Business is nothing but a series of project management, right? Everything in your business is a project that got to be managed, everything. So then the question is, how do we manage these projects successfully? That's it. That's all business is. And it just keeps going on. It's an endless cycle of project management. Big projects, small projects. How do we integrate all these projects? Yada, yada, yada. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow too. It's a system that you got to build to figure out how to do that. Then you got to compete against other people that's trying to take money from you out of your market, right? So then now how do you build that? How do you manage those particular projects? So what I realized is that a lot of people were sold on how to start a business, but were getting no support after they started the business. So then they would come to me to do marketing and couldn't pay for it. They didn't understand the cost associated to it. Their expectations was off, right? That was the problem. So then we had to now go through this whole education process to do that, which didn't make me any money. It made me no money doing that. I was educating people for free because I had to teach them all this stuff so they can understand what they needed to do. But the person that got the money out of them told them, hey, here's how I'm going to teach you how to start a business, but didn't teach them nothing past that. So I realized that our biggest issue was capital and not us not understanding how these actual financial markets work, right? That's one of our biggest issues. Is not just that we need to start a business. Because for a lot of us, if we put us in a room and we try to solve a business problem, we, one, would struggle trying to figure out how to solve it. Two, we would struggle with the implementation of it. And we'll fall out behind it and then nothing to get solved. Because we haven't been trained in that particular area. Right? Elijah Muhammad told Black people, this might have been in the 40s or the 50s, don't quote me on the date. He said a long time ago, Black people have not been taught the science of doing business. They have not. Okay. Amos Wilson came and said that, you know what, Black people are trained to solve Anglo problems. They're not trained to solve their own people's problems. They have no idea. So you have a bunch of dudes on the West Coast that's associated with this Anglo dude right here. Right. And they still don't know how to solve the problems in their local area. And they're not progressing with him because you see, when they jump off from his platform, nothing happens for them. Because why? It's not an education platform on how to teach you how to do your own thing. It ain't like what P did with Snoop, where he gave Snoop the game. So when Snoop left, Snoop knew how to do his own thing. That's not what they're doing over there. Is you just sit here and you engage in foolishness to promote what I'm trying to do, because I've been given an assignment to push a narrative. And you know, you get a little bit of attention, which is really what you think attention is worth more than money. But you never really learn how to do nothing past that. How do you structure this right? How do you build out a team? How do you get editors? How do you get camera people? How do you build relationships with banks to finance what you're doing, right? Because your cash flow can be volatile. How do you do these things? Nothing. So Gina jump off the show and nothing else happens for Gina, right? Trail jumps off the show and he got his little show, but everybody's trying to be a podcaster. But do you really understand the business part of it? Right? And then what he does is he just recycles new Negroes. So he going to lose Britt because Britt got a case. Right? Britt got a serious case in. Right? And Britt used to be out here in the metro. People that know what time it is. Britt used to be out here. right? So Brick he gonna lose Brick. He gonna replace Brick in 10 minutes, right? Same way he replaced Crip Mac. Same way he replaced AD and Trail and all them dudes. He just gonna put these dudes on the carousel because why? He know he can always find some Negroes, right, who want to jump on this little show because why? They in a situation where there is no progress, right? There is no progress in what they're doing, but they not different than a lot of other black folks who think they different than these dudes. There is no progress in their life. That's why they on the internet just complaining about everything. And you ask them, okay, what we want to go do about it? They'll say nothing. I just want to jump on the internet and complain, right? And this is what I try to get you to understand is that your adversary, your opponent is in a weak position right now. They have so, I don't know what the proper word is. They have so discouraged Anglo men because of the direction that they take in this country. This is your opportunity to get a foothold in this economy. But instead, you are going to double down on something that ain't going to help you. Right? So that's what a lot of people don't realize, because you take your prompts from what Anglos do, right? So Anglos tell y'all this is cool to do. That's what y'all take y'all prompts from. Y'all don't have your own mind on what you think we need to do, right? You take your prompts from them. So a lot of this stuff is, I see them do it, I want to do the same thing they doing. If they live in a certain lifestyle and I don't have that, I feel like I'm missing out. So I'm going to follow them and don't realize you follow people down the hole. And that's for men and women. Because you got a lot of black women on this internet, they mad because they're not living the life of a white woman. But the problem is you're not no white woman. So why would you expect to live her life? And you really don't know how white women live because why? You don't live around white folks. You didn't go to school with them. I did. You don't really know their life. So you think you want something that when you get it, you might not want it. But it sounds good on the internet. Because again, you've been programmed to look at them and think they got everything that you want. So then you try to emulate what they got going on. Right? Not realizing they fighting amongst themselves. You understand me? And that's really what's going on in this country is you got Anglo factions fighting amongst each other, but you think you want to be just like them because that's how they program you. So when you have lack of progress, you just going to die out. Right? So this dude is participating in it. And this is how he made himself a lot of money. He got on the little, I don't want to call him weird, but he weird to me, but I ain't going to call the man weird, but he weird to me. Right? Dude got a little show on YouTube. He's supposed to be like a little real estate dude. And he said at one time they was doing $1 million a month. I believe him. Now his numbers dropped off a lot. But at one time he worked that show up from just being in like that little garage interviewing people to where he got a full studio, got multiple camera setups, got editors, got security, whole 9 yards. It was driving $1 million a month off YouTube. Imagine that. And all he putting up is foolishness. You can't learn nothing off that show. But he got a big audience of people to watch it. And a lot of his audience is black folks. Just the same way black people made Vlad a millionaire. Y'all make these people millionaires. They don't make y'all $2. Right? You ain't got $2 worth of information from that person. But y'all make these people millionaires. Okay? So that's what we want to talk about. You got a situation, half to what they put in that indictment. I don't believe it. Right? But some of that stuff in there is real serious. It's real serious. And again, you want to ask yourself, am I progressing in what I'm doing? Right? Big up to Chandler Emerson. We was talking about Kanye West. Kanye West is not progressing. He getting worse. Right? He's not progressing. He's dying a slow death. And everybody's sitting back watching it. Right? And they showing up to take money out of his pocket. But Kanye West is not progressing. He dying a slow death. He's going backwards. And everybody's sitting back watching it. If you don't progress in this game, you're going to die a slow death. You're going to stand still and you're just going to die out. Right? So that's what I want you to understand. You got a serious case. Let the child court lawyer break it down because that's what he does. That's what he get paid. Because, there's no progression on his channel either. It's just a bunch of foolishness. It is what it is. That's what the game rewards. So that's what he does. He made more money off YouTube than he ever made as a professional. That's a fact. Right? So he ain't going to change nothing up. YouTube made that dude a millionaire. And blessings to him in his situation. We not down on him. It is what it is. That's the game that we in. Okay? He just taking advantage of the opportunity in the game. But again, if you're not progressing, you're going to stop and you're going to die a slow death. And it don't mean that you got to be doing $1 million a week. I mean, if you're not making a step forward in what you're doing, on a regular basis, you're going to stand still, right? And you're eventually going to die out. And you're going to look up, right? And you're going to be in a real bad situation because you're going to get stuck on a hamster wheel. And if you are engaged in criminality, if you don't figure out how to get yourself out of criminality, you're going to play yourself out here. There is no getting away with this stuff. And I've been telling people this stuff for years. You cannot get away with this stuff anymore. It's just impossible. It just really is. The way they got this game sold up. And nobody wants to, it's not good at 20 to catch a 30-year sentence. You definitely don't want to catch a 30-year sentence at 60. Right? So like I said, a lot of stuff they're trying to put on you, I don't believe that stuff. It's just too fantastical to me. But if they just get him on transferring prostitutes across state lines, they got him. If they just get you on that, right? Because that's a serious case now in 2025. You feel me? If they just get you on the pimping, pandering, and the hoe handling across state lines, that's gonna be. They don't need to get them on nothing else. I don't believe a lot of the other stuff. It's a movie. I don't believe that. But I know what they do. They throw everything at a wall to see what stick. Because they're going to try to push you into a plea deal. And what they really want is they want his co-Ds to testify against him to really push him into a plea deal. That's how it's going to work. But you don't want to put yourself in that situation. Right? So then again, if you're not progressing, right, it's death. But a lot of that stuff in that indictment, everybody know about some of that stuff. Because they do that out here in Atlanta too. But they don't do it as bad as they do in LA. I know people from LA. I know people from different sections in LA, right? They ain't gonna put their name out here. One of the reasons why the music industry from the black rap side of LA has really fallen off is because a lot of that soft extortion out there. And people need to come out and just say it, right? A lot of that soft extortion that they're doing out there is one of the biggest reasons why a lot of the black rap music out there is not what it used to be for people that's old enough what it was 20, 30 years ago. It's because a lot of that stuff out there, right? Because everybody not with that. So what they're going to do is they just not going to entertain it. What I mean is that they just won't come to LA and do no business. So it's a lot of that soft extortion that they doing, and people know what I mean by saying that. It's a lot of that soft extortion is the reason why a lot of the music scene left LA and came to Atlanta, because in Atlanta it's not as severe as it is in LA. It's not even close. So you can move around out here and not have to deal with a lot of those politics that you got to deal with in LA. It's a lot of rappers out here in the metro. You'd be surprised. We seen Glorilla when she got arrested talk about how she lived in Duluth, and she shouldn't have told people that, but she was drunk. It's a lot of rappers living out here in the metro because why? They not doing that soft extortion like they do in LA. LA known for that stuff. It's real bad. So then if you get involved in that, right, it's illegal what you're doing. It could come back if you follow in that through another situation. It could come back to hit you, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. So here's the little points I wanted to hit before we get too late. And check out Erica when she drop her video like later today. Are you progressing in life or are you stuck, right? Do you see a progress in your life? Are you feeling like you're doing the same thing day in and day out, right? Part of what I'm trying to do on this channel is get you to say, you know what? You need to do something different with your life and go do it. As opposed to just doing the same thing over and over again. Keep talking about the problem. Keep being mad about everything. When you going to do something about it? Right? It don't mean you're going to get to the solution next week. But when are you going to start doing something about it? Right? I sell a course. If you buy my course, but you don't work the course, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change about your life. Right? Because everybody that's had success has worked through it. They didn't start it, and then 90 days later, they doing something different. That don't work. Because I'm here because of consistency. And I know a lot of y'all don't like consistency. That's bored to you. But I'm here because of consistency. Right? I'm here because I got up and I did the same thing day in and day out for an extended period of time. Now you doing that anyway. But the question is, in what you're doing it, how is it serving you to get what you want? So are you progressing in life? Are you stuck? Are you hanging around a bunch of people and they stuck too? Because if you moving forward in life, you're not hanging around a bunch of people that's stuck. So if you're hanging around a bunch of people that's stuck, that's because you stuck too. Because that's the only reason why y'all got something in common. All of this, I had to get around these people. That brother tried to call in last week. I don't believe he was a Marine. I never heard a Marine talk like that in my life, right? I was educated by Marines in ROTC. I ain't never heard Marines talk like that in my life. I don't know every Marine, but I ain't never heard no Marine talk like that, right? So he could be a Marine and I could be incorrect. But if you are around a bunch of people and they stuck, then you stuck too, right? Because y'all wouldn't have nothing in common. You understand what I'm saying? So all of these people jumping on the internet saying, well, you know, I don't want to deal with yada, yada, yada because yada, yada, yada. I don't believe that, because my question is what you ever had in common with those people. If you moving forward and you doing your thing, you're going to be able to find people like that, because why? You're going to be doing your thing. You may have a period of your life where you feel like, you know what, I ain't got a lot of associations, but eventually if you keep doing your thing, you're going to run into other people that are doing their thing, right? So then you just got to continue to build out your network from there. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So this attitude to where, you know, everybody around me is lame, yada, yada, yada. I'm the only person that got something going on. That's internet. That's not real world. Okay. So are you moving forward or are you stuck? Are you content with being stuck? So a lot of people cool with where they're at. So that's why they're not going to do nothing about what's going on in their life, because they cool with it. They've adapted to it. Human being is the most adaptable animal in the world. They figure out how to adjust to it. They've built their life around, this is where I'm at and ain't nothing going to change. So they content with it. They got their little entertainment vehicles. They got their drugs. They got their alcohol. They got their sex. Some people got their religion, and they just cool with being stuck, and they're going to justify being stuck. So when you go to them and say, hey, you know, we can change yada, 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 nothing's going to happen. Are you apathetic about being stuck? Do you just not care? It's just whatever. So even if you're giving a solution to the problem, it's whatever, right? Everything is more important than doing something different, right? I don't care about what's going on. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I'm just apathetic. I'm just burnt out. And a lot of people get burnt out in this system. By the time they hit a certain age, a lot of people just burnt out, right? So they just going through the motions. You know what I'm saying? And it happens to a lot of people. This system will grind you down. It will, especially if you're Black. They got a real good process to do that. And especially if you're a Black man, they got a real good process to do that. It'll just grind you down, right? Because you may not see a way out. You may have tried stuff and it didn't work. So you just get apathetic. You know what I'm saying? And so now you just doing whatever. You check out of society. I talked about, I really believe that people are going to take the matrix check out. They're going to raise their hand to do that. Because why? It's going to be better than their current life. Because we got people that have already done that now. For a lot of people, man, if you cut off social media, they'll commit suicide. They don't know what else to do. Because they don't have nothing else going on in the real world. Because they just apathetic. So it's what'll make me feel good right now. And then 5 minutes later, what's the next thing? Then 5 minutes later, what's the next thing? That's how people get caught up on drugs. So these are questions you got to ask yourself. When I asked you originally, are you bored? Nobody didn't answer the question. But the question again is, are you bored? Do you feel bored about life? Because until you answer that question, then you won't know what to do next. Right? Do you feel bored? No. Okay, then you got a different pathway. Yes. Okay, then you got a different pathway. Are you apathetic about being stuck? So these are questions you got to ask yourself. If you are not progressing in what you're doing, it's not about making $1 million a minute. It's about what is the incremental change that I'm making and what I'm doing that's getting me closer to my goal, that I'm, you know, focused on it on a regular basis. How do I get there? Right? Many people are apathetic about getting stuck. So now what I'm going to show you is this really, really powerful, a piece of this really, really powerful documentary that I want to get you to watch. Let me set the stage for you, right? Some of my New York people are going to know what I'm talking about if you're old enough or if you actually know history. We know history is lacking right now. There was a time in New York City in the South Bronx where essentially the buildings was being destroyed. It was an organized, systemic thing in which they was trying to do in the South Bronx to get rid of a lot of people. And so as a result, the South Bronx was kind of left desolated, right? And it's something that a lot of people don't talk about anymore because, again, they moved on past this period. But you had a lot of people living in the South Bronx, and they decided we're going to do something about what's going on around us, because the way this situation looks is unacceptable. Now, the question we got to ask is that what has changed from back then to current people now? And I believe that because of how people were socialized back then, most importantly, Black people, they had a more community mentality, right? They had a more of a community mentality, and they had a more of a mentality of that we need to take the first steps of change before we start looking to other people. Now it's no community mentality, and then I just jump on here and complain about everything going on in my life. And I don't want to do nothing because I don't want to do the work that's involved. And I'm going to show you the work that actually took place, right? So let me go ahead and get into that real quick because I want to talk about problems, but we're going to transfer into getting stuck. You can go look up this organization. They're still around right now called Banana Kelly, right? And they exist in the South Bronx, okay? So in 1978, this organization called Banana Kelly liberated 3 buildings to begin a long process of rehabilitation through sweat equity. Sweat equity means that you go out and you rebuild your own buildings in your own area, right? So there was this movement in the late 70s and these people in the South Bronx because they realized that government is looking to get us to leave this area. And we're going to kind of talk about that in the video. We've seen this over and over and over again. Now, because we're so many years away from these situations, we've seen all throughout this country, certain Black areas getting starved with resources, getting starved with private capital. So everybody that has the ability to move, what do? They move. The place gets left with a few people left there, no taxes for services, right? So you got no tax rate because there's nobody living inside the buildings anymore. The city takes control of a lot of the buildings. Everybody gets starved out. They did this to parts of Chicago, still going on to parts of Chicago. They definitely did this to Detroit. When Bing took over the city, there was no tax base for him to do anything, right? The water was getting cut off the whole 9 yards. So what they did in 1978 is they say, hey, you know what we'll do is we'll just try to rebuild our own buildings. Created education programs that teach the people in that particular area. Here's how you do construction. These particular areas to rebuild their own buildings. This is primarily a Black male-based movement. There were some women involved. There were even some white people involved. But this is primarily a Black male movement. Now, how are things different now? Well, we know now that we have created a campaign against Black laborers, where we've made Black men feel like suckers if they do physical labor. So now it's hard to find Black men that are willing to do this kind of work because what we've done the past 25 years is told a Black man that if you do physical labor, you a sucker. You need to either put a suit on and have a suit type job, or you need to go do something illegal. So we don't have people that know how to build things like that anymore. So that's why that's getting replaced by other ethnic groups. But they was able to do this on their own. You can go look this up. But what I want to do is show you, because they got a documentary on YouTube, that there was a systematic effort to essentially eliminate people out of the South Bronx. Let me go ahead and get into that real quick.
In theory, almost everyone supports the concept of sweat equity. But after the first blitz of work and sweat, the homesteaders turned around to find another larger theory threatening their hopes and plans, the theory of planned shrinkage.
Planned shrinkage says that New York City should be made into a smaller city than it is, particularly by doing whatever can be done to discourage more poor people from coming into New York City. And therefore, the limited resources of the city should not be used to redevelop areas like the South Bronx or Bed-Stuy or the Lower East Side or East New York. In fact, there should be affirmative steps taken to shrink the city so that the Big Apple becomes a small apple while it retains its big core in Midtown Manhattan, so that we are, in effect, becoming a Latin American city. In Latin America, you have 2 cities, the central city, which would be like Midtown Manhattan, has very good services and is protected. And then the outer city is abandoned by government and has no service. And this is what New York City is getting to be. Those who realize the trends are trying to preserve a fantasy world in Midtown Manhattan, and they hope that the other parts, as they become Black and Puerto Rican, will somehow fend for themselves. I think that is the legacy of the Koch administration for history.
And so kind of what he explained is that there is an intentional goal to make Midtown, those parts of New York, be to get the services, to get the capital, to get things of that nature, and to starve the people out in these other areas of the city. He talked about Bed-Stuy. He talked about East New York. He talked about the Bronx. I've been talking about economic segregation on this channel for 4 years. I had never seen this video until last night. I was watching a documentary. I was watching part 3 of, I forgot the name of this particular documentary, Eyes on the Prize. I was watching that. So this was the first segment in talking about this situation in South Bronx because they started in the 70s. Some of y'all don't know about Eyes on the Prize because y'all don't be on PBS like that, but I do. So I was watching it. I had never seen this video before last night. I've been on here talking about economic segregation and how they're going to segregate these cities economically because they're going to make it to where if you don't have a certain amount of money, you can't live in certain parts of the city. You're not even going to be able to go into certain parts of the city if you don't have a certain amount of money. And there's nothing that you're going to be able to do about it. We're seeing this in Metro Atlanta, where you go to certain parts of the city. In the South, there's no medical footprint. You're so far away from the hospital, right? Because they don't care. The businesses, the hospitals have decided that, you know what, it doesn't make business sense to serve this part of the city, so we're not going to serve it. You don't even see urgent cares down there. So if you have a medical situation, you got to travel long distances just to get some type of services. This is done because it's whatever, right? I've been talking about that. But what made these people different is they say, you know what, we're going to do something about it. So we're not going to sit in the South Bronx and we're not just going to be starved out, right? We're not going to just deal with a bunch of abandoned homes. So there was something called Banana Kelly because there was a block that they claimed was shaped like a banana. And they say, you know what, we're going to rebuild everything on this particular block. And that's what they started to do. And it was primarily a Black male organization, right? Like I said, there was some women there because it was families. It was also some white people involved because they, were allies in that particular situation. And then eventually was able to get some federal grants, yada, yada, yada. But what's the difference between those people and now? In my opinion, people have more of a idea of community. And we had not programmed a lot of Black people, especially a lot of Black men, that if you work with your hands, you're a sucker. And that narrative that really started coming out in the 80s, but then started moving into the 90s and especially into the 2000s, that if you're a Black man and you got a job in which you get dirty every day for work, that you a sucker, you don't deserve a wife, yada, 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 has been very detrimental to a lot of our people because these jobs still need to get done. They have not gone anywhere. Look at the house that you currently live in. Can you build it? No, that means somebody else got to build it. You can't lay down roll. You can't do none of that yourself. With all your education, you can't figure out how to do that. So that means somebody else has to do it, right? So that's what I want you to understand. So we're going to go now talking about problem solving, right? How do you address problems? When you are dealt with a problem, how do you address it? So let me tell you a story real quick. I have problems in my business, right? So 2 or 3 years ago, I had a problem show up in my business, okay? It took me about 120 days to figure out that problem, how to solve it. I had to bring in experts and talk to them about the problem. I had to talk to service providers and ask them, can they solve the problem? I had to speak to other people that knew my business and ask them, how can we solve this problem? It took about 120 days for me to figure out a solution. Then I was finally able to find somebody that can help me, implement the solution. And we implemented the solution. And then the problem got solved. It wasn't something I could solve in a day. It wasn't something I could solve in 2 weeks. It wasn't something I could solve overnight. It took a lot of brain power. It took a lot of thinking. And then it took implementation of the solution. So when I show you this particular image right here, we're talking about problem solving, cause, goals, method, solution, defining, planning, creativity, innovation, cause. Many people don't want to go through this type of process. So then what happens is you now depend on other people to solve your problem for you. So your solution is never going to be greater than what they bring to the table. But you got an education. So I'm going to ask you again, whose problems have you been educated to solve? You hesitate to answer that question. You have a quote unquote formal education. When it's time to solve problems, you don't know how to solve it. You can't figure out how to solve it, right? So then whose problems have you been taught how to solve? Because you're solving somebody's problems. You just can't figure out how to solve your own. And solving the problem is not just coming up with an idea. It's going out and implementing it. So when we got to rebuild these buildings in the South Bronx, we just cannot come up with the idea to rebuild the building. It's called sweat equity. It means what? You got to wake up, come out your house and put that work in. It's day in and day out, right? That's what you got to do. But again, wasn't no internet back then, wasn't no social media. It was television, but it wasn't TV like it is now. They probably didn't even have cable back then. I don't know, right? You didn't have all this. So even in a big city like New York City, you can get people to focus on what needed to be done. And that was still New York City. This was not in the country somewhere. But there was nothing in the South Bronx. So these people realize unless we take over this situation and we do something about it, the goal of the city is to starve us out. The people that have the financial ability to leave will leave. The ones that don't will stay here, and they'll continue to get less and less and less and less services, right? You'll have, they talk about having wild dogs started coming into the area. Then you get all type of crazy people living in these abandoned buildings. A big issue we had out here in the metro of Atlanta, right? Well, it wasn't safe for little kids to walk down the street because you had so many abandoned buildings on their street and people trying to snatch kids, do all kind of crazy stuff, right? So the people in the area said, you know what? We got to go do it. But you know what? While the men was out there working, when nobody telling them, especially the women telling them, you know, you a sucker because you work with your hands and I got an office job. That's not what was going on. So we've essentially socialized our people to where we can't solve problems no more. So now somebody else gonna solve your problem. The problem is, what if they don't solve the problem? Now what you gonna do? You gonna get on the internet and complain about it? Or what a lot of people do is you just move away. So you move away. Now what happens is after enough people move away, now the private money comes back in. So this is what I was talking about with GC. We seen the same thing in Birmingham. Right? We seen the same thing in Atlanta. They're gentrifying areas of Atlanta that 20 years ago, nobody would want to live in. You couldn't get nobody to live in Vine City 20 years ago. Right? I told my nephew the other day off of, we was over there by Edgewood. People that know the metro know what I'm talking about. I say, man, used to be, you come over here around Edgewood, man, you get it. Right? People that really know Atlanta, they know about Little Vietnam. They've gentrified a lot of these areas now, and they're going to keep on gentrifying these areas. But what did they do? They made it so bad that everybody that had the financial ability moved out because that was the easy thing to do, as opposed to say, we're going to entrench and we're going to build this area and we're going to demand that the city and the government comes and serves this area. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So they've done this all over. This parts of Chicago where they've done this. When you go, there's no services, there's no businesses, there's no nothing. It's just houses and you get nothing. You call the police, it might take 12 hours for them to show up, right? So what I'm trying to get you to understand is that how do you address problems? You need to start asking yourself that, right? Next question. Are you apathetic about your problems? The same question, right? Because when I had those problems in my business, if I just was like, well, you know what? It's whatever. It's just something I got to deal with. It's a problem in my business. There's nothing that could be done about it. I realize, this is what I realize, and this is what a lot of people don't realize. If I didn't solve that problem when it started to show up in my business, as I start to bring more people in my business, that problem's going to get even bigger. It was an issue of scale. And it showed up every time I brought a new person into my business. So if I don't solve it now, while my business is at this level, and the goal is to bring more people into the business, the problem will get even bigger as more people come in. The problem will start to multiply itself. So it means what? Even if I got to slow down to solve it, that's what I got to do. I'm dealing with that right now in my business. There's things in my business that I got to slow down what I'm doing to solve this problem. These problems are no joke. They're way bigger than what I thought. And they've impacted me personally. They've impacted relationships, the whole 9 yards. What do I got to do? I have to solve the problem. If I ignore the problem now and just be like, oh man, it's whatever, the problem's not going to go away. It's going to stay there and it's going to continue to negatively impact me. And it's not just impacting me personally. It's also, professionally, it's also impacting me personally. So it'll never go away, right? It's not Trump's job to solve this problem. It's my business. It's not the mayor of Atlanta's job to solve my problem. Me and my team got to get together. I got to bring the right people in to solve it. And then we got to be willing to go through the work to solve it. So what we got to do is figure out what the problem is, come up with a solution, to implement the solution. And be willing to stick with the implementation plan or either adjust it to what we need to do. Because in 2029, the problem will still be there, but it'd be even worse. I got a serious problem inside my business, got to get fixed. Because what is business? It's nothing but a series of managing problems. It's project management over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's all it is. It's not this magic thing. It's project management. So just like the guy was saying on that video, I think his name was Brown and even David. I'll probably link that Erica's video later on. A lot of us have not really been taught how to solve problems. We've been taught to do tasks that somebody else assigns to us. But the abstract ability to look at a problem, understand it, figure out what we're going to do to implement it, then go implement it, which is the big part. See, because going and remodeling these buildings, that's the day in and day out work. The idea is one thing. Now you got to go do it. That's what a lot of people are going to drop off at because they don't want to put that work in. Right? I used to see that when I was doing production. A lot of people wanted to be directors. They didn't want to be crew because they wanted to be the celebrity. I'm the director. I tell people what to do. I did crew jobs because I wanted to learn how to make a movie. I didn't want to learn just how to direct. So I did enough crew jobs where I did everything that needed to be done on a set. So when it was time for me to make my movie, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Other people need everybody else to put everything in position and they just come in and direct. I don't need that. I can put a whole project together on my own. So I know how to hire for the project because why? I did every project on the set. Everything that could be done on the movie set, I done it. So when it was time for me to do my own deal, I knew exactly what so I sat down with my director. We did my shot list, right? We sat down and we broke down the shots we did at the day of the shoot. We did everything we needed to do because why? I did it. So this is where a lot of people struggle. They don't want to do the implementation. They don't want to do the day in and day out work. They just want to do the part that's sexy, that look good, and they want to leave. Okay? Do you believe that problems can be solved using systems and processes? I'm going to talk about this a lot tomorrow. Many of us are apathetic about our problem. So what we do is we do this. We say, well, you know what? God tell you not to worry. God gonna solve the problem. That's escapism. And you're talking to a believer. You're talking to somebody that got a deep faith, right? And a deep belief in God. And I know that that's escapism for a lot of people. People that and let me explain something to black people, right? Because that's primarily my audience. When you keep telling your children that, they lose confidence in you. And that's one of the reasons why we got problems with kids right now today. This has been going on for decades. When we're see these people in the Bronx, if they would have told their children, here's how we going to solve the problem. We going to just wait on God to come solve the problem. They said, no, we have the ability. We got the minds. We got to work together, right? And we got to come up with a solution. Then we got to work the solution every day. Then you pray to God, shows you favor in your endeavors. But it don't mean you just sit back and say, well, God told us not to worry about nothing. We're not worrying. We're addressing the situation. And people fall back to that until it's something they want to do. Then we got to deal with it. So it's I need to go from the metro to California. And God gonna just deliver me there. No, I'm finna go buy me a plane ticket and get on a plane. It's when I don't want to deal with something, it's God gonna fix it. Because I don't want to deal with it. Because I don't really want the people that I want to look up to me to realize I can't solve problems. That's the real problem. I am insecure about the fact that I'm a whole adult. I have children and I'm faced with a situation and I don't have an answer to the problem. And instead of telling the people around me, well, let me work the problem out, I tell them, well, you know what? God gonna fix it. Right? And what realizing is that they losing confidence in you because they know you gassing them. They know you gassing them. And that's why we got a lot of these kids out here moving the way they're moving right now today, because they don't have no faith in adults. But adults want to blame the children. I'm telling the adults, you need to look at yourself. Because what have you done to make them children have confidence in you? But see, we don't want to deal with that part of it. We just want to blame young people. But young people didn't build this world. This world was built by adults. So if they come into this world and certain things ain't out here for them, how that's their fault? But it's easy to blame them. That's what they did when I was young. My generation, they blamed us for everything, but we didn't do it. They did it. So we came into the world and they didn't have nothing for us, but then they blamed us for acting out. Right? But other people got stuff for them, but we ain't got nothing for us, but they blamed us. So I don't do that to the youth. Right? Because it's our job to make a way for them. It ain't their job. So this is what I'm trying to tell you is that when we don't believe that our problems can be solved using systems and processes, we don't build systems and processes at all. I'm not saying that in an emergency, you just got to throw something together. What I'm saying is that long problems, the problems that are in my businesses, it's a problem of systems and processes. I don't have the right systems and processes in my business to solve certain problems. That was a problem before. I had to build a system and a process to solve that problem. It's not that I shouldn't worry about the problem because God don't want me to worry. Right? That's not the solution to that problem. Right? But people will try to tell you that because why? They don't have a solution. And that's how they keep you right up under them. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, when I'm going to show you whole systems that these people use while telling you, you just should pray for it. But that's not what they're doing. Right? And that's not what you do. Your car don't work off prayers. Your car is a system. You jump on a plane, that's a system. You get on the road, that's a system. These are all systems that you're using. The water come out your house, that's a system. But when we don't want to work our way and solve things and do the day in and day out work to solve it, you don't want to do it. I'm gonna say this maybe before I read the comments, and we're gonna get up and out of here. It's a dude that Israel killed probably 60, 90 days ago. He was who they said the leader of Hezbollah was, even though the real leader of Hezbollah, you ain't gonna see him. People don't know how that type of stuff work. Them people ain't gonna show you who their real top person is, right? They're gonna put somebody out there for you to look at. But he was the out front guy for Hezbollah. Years ago, he said that if we have situations going on in our communities and we don't address it, we saying it's acceptable for it to get to pass on to our children, right? A lot of people are cool with, I have a set of issues going on inside my family. I have a set of issues going on inside my group. And what I won't do is figure out how to solve it. So what does it mean? It means the people that come after me are going to deal with the same issue. And they're cool with that. They're cool with it, right? Because that's essentially what they're doing. They're passing that on to the next generation. They don't have a desire to say, you know what, here's these set of things. Here's what we can work on to make sure that the next generation don't have to deal with certain stuff. We ain't saying that you're going to be able to solve every problem, but what are we working on so the next generation? It's not just about, I want to make sure my kids have a better life than me, so I buy them a lot of stuff. No, there's problems inside your family. There's problems inside your group that have not been solved. When are you going to solve them so the next generation don't have the same problem? Because you've had the problem, your mama had the same problem. Your daddy had the same problem. Your grandparents had the same problem. When are you going to do something about it? It's not just that your kids didn't get a lot of material items. That's not the real problem. And you know that. Right? There's structural issues going on inside your family. When are you going to solve that? Right? There's addiction issues going on inside your family. When are you going to start solving those problems? There's relationship dysfunction issues going on inside your family. When are you going to solve that? Right? But what we'll do is we'll pass it on to our kids. So they get all of that. And these things compound over time. Let me say something real quick I want you to talk about, because we talk about economics a lot. There's people going to get caught up in this indictment, right? First off, we have to deal with reality. People say, well, you know, you son played pro ball. We know, again, that people on the internet don't do numbers. They just do words come out their mouth. Big U's son barely makes $1 million a year. He can't retire his daddy off of that in California. Right? You can't. I looked at homes off Slauson last night because I'd be looking up real estate late night. A lot of homes off Slauson is $1 million. They million plus, 1.5, 1.8. Right? U's son make about $1 million a year playing ball. That ain't enough money to retire his daddy in California. You could barely retire his daddy probably in Alabama off that salary. Right? A lot of the younger people that's caught up in this, that's going to get caught up in it. Right? They're going to go to jail. That's going to entrench a lot of the problems in their family. Right? These are things we got to think about. We out here doing what we're doing. A lot of people, a problem in your family is poverty. Nobody in your family has really figured out how to make over $60,000, $70,000 a year. It's economic instability. It's income instability. Are you doing things to solve that problem? Or are you doing things to keep that problem going? Because poverty in this country got a lineage, just like wealth got a lineage. Capital got a lineage. Right? Poverty also has a lineage. So you making a certain amount of money per year. Are you doing things to help solve that problem? Or are you doing things to keep that problem going? Right? Because the impact of that poverty is going to get worse and worse over time. It will. It's going to get worse and worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Right? Because of inflation, asset valuation, which continues to go up because of inflation. It's going to get worse and worse over time. But if you don't think that's a problem because you just living your life and you doing what you doing and you know God gonna change it and yada, 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 you are a doomsday person when you believe it don't matter because you know, God gonna come back and he gonna destroy the world anyway, you don't feel motivated to do anything about it. So if it don't happen, then what happens? Your children got to deal with it, because I talked to somebody in my family before. We have to start conditioning our young people in a world where a home gonna cost $1 million. We already see that now when LA homes cost $1 million, and we off Slauson. Homes in the metro now costing, if you lucky, $350. If you're not lucky, $550. Right? And we're not even talking about in the best part of the city. I seen townhomes in the metro. This was years ago. They wanted $800,000 and you get no yard. And they want a cold $800,000. So asset valuation gonna keep going up. If you think somebody that's the president gonna change that, you delusional. You're at Disney World. You're really at Disney World on a weekend pass that has lasted for years. If you think a guy that's president is going to be able to bring down asset valuation, his job is to increase the value of assets. That's why he's there. Don't be foolish. So if you don't deal with these situations in your family, they not going to change. They not. And it's going to go on. And as assets continue to go up, as valuation continues to go up, I don't know what people are going to do. That's a major problem we have in this particular world. That's why everybody's trying to play these little meme coins, because of asset valuation. You're going to see more and more people living out of their car, living in vans, right? That's old school. People do, y'all don't remember that. A lot of people used to live in vans. If you old enough to remember that, y'all don't know them type of vans people used to live in. People used to low-key live in the vans. That's come back. You're going to see a lot of that because of asset valuation. If you have these issues in your family and you do not decide to address it, they're not going to get better over time. So if God don't come back in your lifetime, what's going to change? Because that's what you betting on, right? You a doomsday person, right? God ain't told me that. That's not the instructions I was given, right? I was told I don't know when he gonna come back, so I don't factor that into my analysis. That, well, you know, he gonna come back in this year and in this. I don't do that, right? I keep pushing what I'm pushing. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? If it happened, it happened. I'm gonna be prepared for it. But my business model is not based on in this year God gonna come back and the whole world gonna get destroyed. No. Because people don't want to get into that, because we'll get really deep into it. A lot of stuff they realize they believe ain't really even in the Bible. Right. But that's a whole nother conversation. So we're going to read these comments, man. I don't want to be here too late. Check out Erica Williams when she dropped a video today. But the video she dropped yesterday is very valuable, because a guy really talks about how they plan this society out for a lot of us regular 9-to-5 people to not be successful. Right. So Unsullied Jews, man, appreciate the $4.99 super chat. Miss Denise, man, appreciate the becoming a YouTube member. Ray Gun, man, big up for being a sub. Big up to East Atlanta. Jared, man, appreciate the $2 super chat. Christian Amerson, man, appreciate the $2. Yeah, most definitely. Like we talked about Kanye. Kanye is done, bro. I feel bad for him, right? And a lot of what he's saying that he said the other day, people that follow my old Facebook, y'all went on Facebook with me back then. What he talked about with Kim Kardashian, I was telling people that 6 years ago on Facebook. They couldn't get it. I had to stop coming with certain levels of game because I realized I'm dealing with people that can't get it. That's what Mr. Dangerous told me. And I'm not talking about you, Christian. I'm just saying I had to just keep it on the economic piece, because I realized it's a level of game that people really, they can't understand it. What he was talking about with Kim Kardashian, I was telling people that 6-7 years ago. People that really been around know exactly what they was looking at with that situation. They know exactly what they was looking at. My question to Kanye is this. If you knew that, why you dealt with it? But the reason why he dealt with it, because Kanye's a trick with a hooker fantasy, right? Amber Rose talked about that. He got a hooker fantasy, right? So he's a trick with a lot of money with a hooker fantasy. That's why he did what he did. Because if you knew that about it, why you dealt with it then? Lindell Moore, man, appreciate 999, always preaching the truth. I appreciate it, bro. Big up to you and what you got going on. JLD, man, appreciate it. The $10 super chat, right? So, let me get this out of here. GC says, I realized over time, a lot of adults I came up with did not have an answer to the problems we've been dealing with for decades. Most definitely, GC, 100%. And they haven't been educated to be able to solve the problem. And Carter G. Woodson was talking about that in the early 1900s. This ain't nothing new. It's a planned education system, right? And we would have to get really deep into it, talking about like the colonial education system. And that's what this is. Again, people touch on it, but don't really talk about how it really works. And it's really not designed for us to really be empowered. It's designed for us to play a role in this system. And if we're good at that role, then we get financially compensated. But it's really not designed to empower us, because the goal of this system is not to produce empowered people. You got to go do that on your own. But the system's not designed to produce that. Not for the level that we're at. Right. So I agree with you. GC says it was Anglos scared to walk around North Birmingham. I seen so many Anglos riding bikes, walking their dogs, doing construction. Definitely. I seen this, GC. This was now 6-7 years ago. I came out of Atlanta, this area in Atlanta called Kirkwood. And I went to Kirkwood to go look at a property. And I seen Anglos out there doing the same thing, walking their dogs. That would have never happened 10, 15 years ago. Kirkwood was a notorious area in the city. Everything has just changed. Like really, really changed. And so that's what they did, is they starved out certain areas to get everybody that had the ability to leave. And then the people that was left, that's why if you go to Atlanta, GC, you can go to really nice areas and you see a lot of Black unsheltered people, because they haven't left yet, right? And you'll be like in a really, really nice area. And so we're still transitioning, but you see a lot of that in certain parts of the city, right? Especially even Midtown. A lot of Black people that are unhoused will still be in those areas because they just haven't left yet, but it's a slow process to get them out. Because one thing about Atlanta, I've told people for years, if you want to look at, like, it's this particular word, I don't know how to pronounce it properly. It's called laissez-faire. I forgot it. Capitalism, where it's very much nobody's going to help you get it from a government standpoint. You got to kind of get it on your own. That's Atlanta. A lot of people coming here not knowing that's what it is. Yeah, this city, man, if people sit out here and watch you starve to death out here, they don't care. So that's very much what's going. A lot of these people that are representing the city, they don't even live in the city. They live way, way, way out. But they're putting a face on the city, in the city that they don't even live in. They don't even live close like I do. They live like in the far, far out metro. T.I. live out in Henry County, right? Did he ever live in Atlanta? I don't know, because I wasn't in the city when he was there. But T.I. live in Henry County. Like a lot of these people that are celebrities and got put the face on the city, they don't even live in the city because it's too expensive, right? Take a lot of money to be moving around the city, bro. So big up to Birmingham. They're going to flip that whole thing over. I see it already showing up. Monique Hall says there's a lot of people want to start a business without any regard to running the business, managing operation, understanding the industry. I agree with you, Monique Hall, but this is what they've been taught. They've been taught you just got to start it. And so the people that are teaching them that are not educating them past that point, right? So the Black PhD telling people that you don't need to do a job application, you need to go start an LLC, is feeding into that narrative, right? And it is what it is. It's so easy to tell people that without any education past that, because we both know once you start making a certain amount of money in business, you got a whole different set of problems. And there's not a lot of people that can help you solve those problems. So part of the business first is making the money. Then once you start making the money, a whole new set of problems come up. I had to learn, once I started making a certain amount of money, I had to go get a CPA, right? Because I was paying too much money in taxes. I was paying so much money in taxes, man, it was crazy. But I didn't know that because I had never made that kind of money before. And I didn't know that when you make a certain amount of money with an LLC, it passes straight through the LLC. So I had to get a CPA, form a whole new type of structure. I pay myself now in my business. I didn't know nothing about that type of stuff. I'm an employee in my own business. So these are things that we don't know until we get to that point. But I had to have people around me, right, that can help me in that particular area, because these people on the internet, they just making content. You'll waste 50 hours listening to a lot of these folks and still never get solutions to the problem because they just making content. A lot of these CPAs on the internet, man, they goofies, right? Big up to Miss Brandon Williams, who's not a goofy. But a lot of these Brandon Williams are AC account tax. But a lot of these accounts on YouTube, they goofies, man. So big up to Brandon Williams. Go link up with her because she's not a goofy. A lot of these people are goofies. You'll watch their videos for 12 hours and won't learn nothing. They trying to get internet fame. It's crazy out here. Most definitely. Yeah, he got deep ties. This dude got deep ties to the Democratic Party. Right? Deep ties. You know what I'm saying? Real life. Especially with them Clintons. That's a whole That's a whole nother ball of wax dealing with them. You know, they some serious people. Exactly, Christian. Yeah. God will bless your action. But Chris, they got to want to do the action, bro. And they don't want to do it. So that's what it is. They got to want to do the action. And that's, I don't want to do that, because with the action comes trial and error, comes failure, all these things, right? But you got to want to do the, and most people don't want to do the action. It's that day in and day out work people don't want to do. So this type of work, people don't want to do that, right? They don't want to do that because one, there's no guarantee, right? Because we do know, Christian, that even though these people did this, the South Bronx still went real bad in the 80s because of crack cocaine and even more destruction of the environment. So what they didn't 100% work, but it was a movement where people say, you know what, we're not going to sit back and wait on these people because we know what they're trying to do. Let's do something for ourselves as a community. But I think a lot of people don't want to do the work and they want guarantees in life. Only guarantee in life is you're going to die one day, right? That's it. Everything else is up in the air, right? Everything else is up in the air in your lifetime. The only thing that's going to happen in your lifetime 100% is you're going to die. Everything else is up in the air, right? So that's what a lot of people don't want to deal with. They want to deal with everything else. So I 100% agree with you. God will bless your action. Come up with a plan, come up with a strategy, start implementing and pray on your every day for what you're doing. And God going to bless that work that you're putting in. If you're doing it right and you doing it in God's will, God going to bless it. I think people don't have confidence in that. And they want it to happen overnight. And that ain't how this work. You know, so I feel you on that, bro, 100%. Larry J says Mexicans in Detroit are very upwardly mobile because they're good at repairing homes, work together. Yeah, I feel you. And I don't just think they're also not waiting on a politician, because in Mexico, there is no politicians don't fix anything. Mexico's run by cartels. So, and Larry J, I think they don't have a point of reference yet to think that government's going to solve their problems, because in Mexico, the government is failed. It's a failed state. Mexico is a narco state. So in Mexico, if your people don't do nothing, you won't have nothing. And so I think that we have in America an expectation that government will work, and it should, because they're taxing us. But we have higher expectations than what actually takes place. So yeah, I agree. Government should work because I'm paying taxes. So they should work on some level. We're dealing with people that have no point of reference for government ever working, because Mexico's a failed state. Nigeria is a failed state. These places have failed. So the only way to have anything is your group has to go get it, right? So they come over here and they just operate here the way you got to operate in their land, right? Where I think our expectation of government is too high. I don't think we should have no expectation because I pay taxes. So I'm going to have some expectation because you're taxing me. So I just talked about earlier on, I paid a lot of money in taxes. So because of what I pay in taxes, I do have an expectation because I'm paying, right? So they're not going to be able to tax me and do nothing. But at the same time, I don't think that they're going to save the day if I don't have an organization that's designed to help me out, right? And so I think that too many of us think that government is going to save the day without an organization that's designed to put pressure on government, like AIPAC, where they get money for Israel and nobody ever talks about they should cut their money. So if you notice, Larry J, they're talking about cutting everybody's money except Israel's money. That's not getting talked about being cut, because why? Of the organization that they built to make sure their money don't get cut out. You can't even discuss cutting their money. It can't even be put on the table. And there were people that will argue that our foreign policy is dominated by what's in the best interest of Israel. That's a whole nother conversation we don't want to get into. So they have an organization which puts pressure on government. We build no organization, so then you can't compel government to do anything for you, because at the end of the day, we have no organization. We haven't done what these people did in the South Bronx, where they put together an organization. We just organize and get on YouTube and complain about stuff. That's our problem. And that don't solve no problems. You know what I'm saying? So I agree with you on that. But yeah, these people are coming from failed states. I don't think Americans really realize how much of a failed state Mexico is. Like, it's bad down there. It's bad in a lot of places of Africa. Like these places have failed. There is no government structure. And there also is no taxes. We pay a lot of taxes here. So we should have an expectation that something gets done because I know what I paid out in taxes, right? And then as a trader, I pay more in taxes than the average person because I get short-term capital gains taxes. So yeah, I do have expectation of government. They better do something for this money I'm paying, right? So y'all be easy. Don't want to hold y'all too long for to get back to see what these markets looking like. But I want to always encourage you, man. Make sure that you address your problems and then make sure that you progress in life, right? Don't get stuck where you at because life's going to go on and you'll find that you'll be 60, 70, 80 years old and you'll still be trying to move around this particular planet like you're 25 and 30. That don't work, right? And to be big Eugene, pushing 60, and you now got to face a 25, 30-year sentence. That ain't no joke, right? That's not a joke, right? To be brick, to be pushing 40 and facing a 20, like this ain't no joke. And what they're going to do is they're going to get them dudes a lot of time because they're going to put pressure on them dudes to take a plea, right? And you don't want to be taking no plea like that. You didn't want to be Meech pushing 40, taking a 30-year plea. You didn't want to do that. So you just don't want to put yourself in these situations. Where are you progressing to? What's your growth in what you're doing? Are you staying stuck, right? Are you repeating bad patterns? And then if you do something, are you growing in that? Are you doing the work to grow? Again, if you buy something from me, are you doing the work? Or did you just buy it and walk away? Because you're not going to get no results like that. It's not a magic trick. It's work, right? And then when it comes to solving problems, the way you're going to really be able to get the real success in this world is you and your people solve problems. You just don't come up with ideas, right? You just don't come up. You just don't brainstorm. You actually go and implement the problem. You deal with the trial and error. You ask God to bless your efforts. You wake up the next day, you start all over again. That's how you do it, right? And that's how things get solved. Because again, we're talking about Israel. We're talking about APAC. They didn't build that organization overnight. And there's a lot of work that they go into to make sure their organization stays up, right? So people got to have that type of framework when looking at stuff. If we need stuff that happen every 60 days, we need something new to pop up, you ain't going to get nothing done, especially on the government level, because governments don't work like that. And what we see with a lot of black politics is every 30 to 60 days, it's a new story. If you're dealing with AIPAC, it's the same story every day, which is what? Money to Israel. There is not a different story. If you in a political, you talking about politics and every day it's a different story, you ain't got no politics. Because when you're dealing with AIPAC, it's the same story every day. What is the story? Money to Israel. There is no new story. They don't have a new narrative. They got the same narrative 365. See? So they able to push politics because of that. So everybody in that organization, the number one thing they're trying to do is make sure that relationships are good between Israel and the United States to make sure that money keeps flowing to their country. That's the game. So again, these shows where every day it's a political variety show, they not pushing politics because why? It's something different. What we pushing from a political standpoint, what's our focus, what's our goals, where we moving towards that? That's all we want to be focused on. It's called being focused, but everybody different. Everybody look at things different. Y'all stay easy, man. I'll talk to y'all later.